So let's go ahead and get started. And hello, everyone, and welcome to tonight's third Audience Choice edition of the great movies for this summer, a discussion of Ladybird from 2017, directed by Greta Gerwig. And before we get into that discussion, my name is Andy Wolverton, and I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host and partner in crime, Darnase Jasper. Darnase and I are both librarians in the Anne Arundel County, Maryland Public Library System, which sponsors this program. Okay. All right. Well, let's get into our discussion of Lady Bird from 2017. Now, this is an audience choice movie nominated by Jim, who is going to be leading us through it tonight. And thank you, Jim, in advance. But this is a film I had previously thought about programming myself. So I was delighted to see it become an audience choice movie. My pre-pandemic practice, some of you know, before all this madness hit, I usually tried to go to the theaters and see as many Best Picture nominees as possible. So I'll be honest, I grudgingly went to see Lady Bird thinking, there is no way I'm going to relate to this movie. I'm probably not even going to enjoy it. It's about a girl. I'm a guy. She's West Coast. I'm East Coast. She's Catholic. I'm Protestant. There is no reason for me to feel any connection to this movie, but I fell in love with it. And on rewatching it for this discussion, I think I'll love it even more. Lady Bird is obviously a coming of age story, and it's a mother-daughter story, but it's also a journey of faith story and a film, I believe, primarily about identity. Christine has renamed herself Lady Bird, and like most teenagers at some point in their lives, she wants to remake herself. And I'm sure we'll talk more about her relationships with family, friends, lovers. And there's so much going on in this film, and I can't wait to get Jim going on it here in just a second. Just a couple of notes. The film was nominated for 5 Oscars: Best Picture, Best Actress for Saoirse Ronan, Best Supporting Actress for Laurie Metcalf, playing the mom, Best Original Screenplay, and Best Director. Now, this was only the 5th time that a woman has ever been nominated for Best Director. Unfortunately, it didn't win any awards, but it did win 2 Golden Globe Awards for Best Musical or Comedy and Best Actress for Saoirse Ronan. It also won tons of other awards, which you can find a long list on Wikipedia. So I encourage you to check that out as well. So with that in mind, I am going to turn it over to Jim. Jim, it is all yours.
Okay, so I'm going to add a little teeny bit to what Andy said. This was actually Greta Gerwig's first solo directing of a movie, and also her first solo script write. She had co-written other movies and co-directed one more, The Nights and Weekends. Also, another thing besides the awards, that there's this thing called Rotten Tomatoes out there, which is sort of a Metacritic thing, and they rate it through their weighted scales as being the 12th best picture of all time. So through that, so it had the record. It has the record of the most positive reviews in a row. It had 156 positive reviews going. So the script took years to write. At one point, it was 350 pages long. And Greta Gerwig didn't decide that she wanted to direct it until she had finished the script. So there are some similarities between Greta Gerwig's life and Lady Bird. Greta grew up in Sacramento, and she went to an all-girls Catholic high school, and she went to college in New York. But then she had this to say at at the New York Film Festival press conference. She said, "Nothing in the movie literally happened in my life, but it has a core of truth that resonates with what I know." So when I was thinking about it, I was thinking about the name Lady Bird, and I thought, does this have anything to do with Lady Bird Johnson? And Greta Gerwig contradicted that. She said, Lady Bird Johnson was not the inspiration from the name. She said she just did a press conference in Texas, and it's so confusing there. They were like, why? Why did you call it Ladybird? In another interview, she said that the name seemingly came out of nowhere. I had been writing all these other scenes and I couldn't find exactly how it all fit together. I felt it was, I kept hitting a wall. And then I put everything aside and I wrote at the top of the page, why not, why won't you call me Ladybird? You promised that you would. And I have no idea where that came from. She then later realized that she had the name in her head because she had once read a mid-18th century Mother Goose rhyme that starts Ladybird, Ladybird. So then Saoirse Ronan was born in Ireland and lived her first 3 years there. And then her parents brought her to the United States and she lived here for a few years. And then they moved back to Ireland. And from an early age, she got into stage and TV and films. At age 11, she was in a major role with Michelle Pfeiffer, Paul Rudd, and Tracy Ullman in a film that went straight to DVD, and I haven't been able to find it anywhere. At age 13, she was in a major role in Atonement with Keira Knightley and James McAvoy, and she had the title role in Mary Queen of Scots, and has had 4 Oscar nominations, including Lady Bird. Then the number 2 actress in there, Laurie Metcalf, the mom, at the time of when she was filming this, she had a rebellious teenage daughter. So she said, I had that part down. So now some questions for you out there. Had anybody, how many people had not seen the movie before? Good. I'm glad that a lot of people got to see it for the first time. Did anybody not like the film like Andy thought he would? Good. All right. Good, good. So Lady Bird's relationship with her mom is primary throughout the film. What did you notice about it?
Okay, so you got Ethan, and then Bill Sakura, and John. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah.
Okay. Ethan first.
What I love most about the relationship between Lady Bird and her mom is the way it changing on a dime is like a huge understatement. There's a very specific scene when they're shopping in the thrift store for the pink dress that she's going to wear at Thanksgiving, and they're saying all these backhanded compliments to each other, like, you know, maybe you would be able to fit in this dress if you didn't have that sucking helping of pasta, or that was from a different scene, but you understand what I'm saying. They're totally going at each other about all the things that they dislike about each other, and then all of a sudden Ladybird goes, I love this dress, it's perfect, and the mom is totally agreeing with her, and it's like the past minute of them arguing with each other didn't even happen. I love that. That felt so realistic to me. I loved every second of that one scene.
Excuse me. Bill Sakura?
So the very first scene where the two of them are lying in the motel hotel bed and their faces are looking right at each other. I mean, that kind of defined the whole movie. And you could see a physical resemblance there. But the problem, I think, with their relationship is that they're so similar that they can't possibly, they're so similar they can't relate to each other, which is weird, but true.
Agreed. John?
I'm up here in New Jersey, and I grew up in a town called West Orange, and there's a distinctive, there's a very
Accent girl.
okay, there's a very distinctive. People who are from the area know you have up the hill and down the hill, and I grew up down the hill. And to make a long story short, I saw in this movie the relationship between my older sister and my mom. So many instances because we were very working class. My dad was a contractor, and he had trouble during the late '70s. And all my sister's friends were from up the hill, where our high school was, which I went to too. And I was a little different because I just I settled into a different type of friend group. But my sister wanted to be someplace else, wanted to go to a big school, wanted the things that we didn't have. And there was so many little episodes, and the relationship between my sister, my mom, grew stronger in later life. But oh my gosh, the clashes, and they were so similar, but the clashes that they had during those years, the things we sacrificed for, just to try to get my sister where she wanted to be, came out in this movie in so many ways. That's why I thought Laurie Metcalf was so spot on about a mom dealing with those things, because I saw it happening. So that's why I was so glad to see this movie and know we were having to talk about it tonight. Very cool.
Thanks, John. Awesome. Arthur, you here now?
Hi, I watched the movie for
Jeff.
the first time the other day, and I have to say that I was impressed with it, but I noticed that the relationship involved two very strong, independent personalities. You knew that the love was there, but sometimes it was just hard for them to express it to one another because both of them had their own way of approaching things. Like, for example, school. The mother thought she should have went to a city college or something like that, where Ladybird wanted to go to a more prestigious school. You know, and you could see the conflict. But if you watch the movie, you know that deep down inside, they both really loved each other. They had a hard time expressing it.
Very true. Very true. Thanks, Arthur. Okay, Jeff?
Well, I just kind of everybody's made good points here, but I really love this relationship between these two because everything about it just rang so true, and maybe the girls on the panel can speak. But it just very much like a very much what you would expect a contentious, sometimes contentious mother-daughter relationship. Obviously, like the mother is very much a master of the passive aggressive thing there. She came across almost mean sometimes, but there's so many little moments where you see through that and you see that no, that's not the case. Like when they're listening to the audiobook in the beginning there, and that's obviously like a little personal moment between the two of them. The scene that Ethan mentioned, where this affection just comes out of nowhere, in the middle of an argument, and I love the scene at the end where Laurie Metcalf just goes, "You don't want to just do our little thing that we do sometimes," and they go out and they look at expensive real estate together. And the thing that makes that so beautiful to me is that the inference that they've done this before. It's not like these people just appeared right now and this is something they do. That you get the sense that they have a history. This is something they've done before. And I just thought that relationship was written so beautifully.
Great point, Jeff. Jan, go ahead.
Well, I agree with all above. I do have a question. In one scene, the mother was seen what looked like to be counseling the priest who had an illness. And I was left thinking, is she a psychiatric nurse or a counselor? At first, I thought she appeared in scrubs and it looked like she was more of a clinical nurse. But then in that one scene, although you could have, let's say, an oncology nurse counseling a patient, I was left a little confused with that. If she was a counselor, all the more reason she had such trouble with her daughter, I guess. It was a little confusing to me. So I'd like the other's opinion. What exactly was her job description? I think I missed that. And then it was interesting that the daughter's closest then female relationship, aside from the one good friend, appeared to be the nun, who I thought she had a very honest discussion with. When the nun said, "Look, I know you did it. Don't even bother trying it," and they had a real honest discussion. That seemed to be who she related to. But if anybody has an opinion, what was the mother's occupation? Because that left me baffled.
Well, I'm picking a couple of things up from the chat, and Ethan made a comment that I also thought that that maybe the priest was in the hospital for a suicide attempt, and maybe she's that type of person, or like maybe he was in a position and she had to kind of counsel him. I didn't think that she was a therapist, and maybe it's just me, but a lot of people bring their work home, and the way that she spoke to her daughter didn't seem to me like someone who had that kind of background. That was just me. One thing I wanted to know is, one thing I wanted to point out, and I didn't know if anybody mentioned this, but I had a really hard time relating with her because if she was my mother, I probably would be so frustrated as much as Ladybird was, until she said the thing about her mother being an alcoholic, abusive person. And then I realized that it's very possible that she didn't know how to mother. And so those moments when they were having those those love moments and those kind of moments were like when she realized she related to her daughter, but when she had to be the mom, she really didn't know how to be that person. And it was a really strange kind of relationship, probably her growing up, but it was really kind of like an interesting dynamic when you saw that. When I looked back and look at those moments, it was oh yeah, we're having a good time, and then Ladybird would say something that was like, daughter to mother, and she would either become, very defensive or very critical, or kind of maybe fall back into that sort of relationship and then bring herself back out. Like I think she was struggling with that. That was my impression. We got a lot of things in the chat. Sorry, Jim.
Oh,
I just wanted to check to make sure that I'm catching everything. But go ahead.
I just saw Suzanne said that a psychiatric nurse, and that's what I was under the impression that she was too.
Yeah.
So I have a couple of groups of quotes that help illustrate the relationship. One, when she was talking with Danny before, when things were going on, Danny said, "Your mom's hard on you," and Ladybird says, "Yes, she loves me." And then another time, Ladybird was talking with her mom, and she says, "Do you like me?" And her mom says, "I love you." And then Ladybird comes back and she says, "Yes, but do you like me?" And then later on, Ladybird's talking to her dad, and she says, "Does mom hate me?" And dad comes back and says, "You both have such strong personalities." And that's what someone else had mentioned, is the strength of their personalities as being the course of the cause of the clash. Okay. Next thing is that, why do you think Danny made out with Ladybird since he was gay?
That's an easy one. Chuck.
Yeah, I think he was just going through kind of the same thing. Ladybird was as far as identity. He's trying to figure out his identity in the end. There's obviously that comes from maybe partly from some shame for his religious background in the college or the high school he's going to. But I think he's might be confused. But then later on, he is pretty much certain that he's not confused. He's figured it out. That he's gay.
Chuck, anybody else? Jeff?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I pair the little scene where she discovers him in the washroom with the other boy, to the end, the scene later on where she's very consciously avoiding him, and then he basically confronts her outside that place there, and I love the way that they approach that scene because he says, in essence, I'm figuring this out, and please don't tell or don't say anything, because I, I think he has a sense of shame there, but he also has a sense that he's in transition, and I'm just not sure, and he says, Please don't say anything to anybody until I can figure this out," and to her credit, she doesn't, and I think that scene is so beautiful.
It was. Yeah, she was definitely his beard.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
sort of, Andy.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead,
I,
Andy.
I was just wanted to respond to Jeff's comment. I think that's a great scene where Danny is trying to explain to her what happened, and she's very angry at first, but then I think she realizes what's going on, and I think what's going through her head is this isn't all about me. That he's got a problem, because you see her facial expression change
Hmm.
in the middle of that scene, and I think somebody mentioned in the chat that she's a very selfish person. I think this is the beginning of her not being as selfish. I mean, she certainly are many other scenes where she is, but I think this is a very important moment for her. So I'm glad you mentioned that scene.
Definitely. And what, Bill? Oh, you're still muted. Bill, you're still muted. You got it?
Fine.
There you go.
Okay. Usually the spacebar works. So I don't necessarily think that she was selfish. She was self-centered, because she's a teenager, and they all kind of are. But I think that that was a point of growth for her, where she showed that she could have empathy. And the interesting thing is, if throughout the movie, if you look at the scenes of the mother when she's at work, she definitely can show empathy, but she couldn't show empathy with her daughter. And that was, again, I think the problem with that whole relationship. Both of them seemed to be able to develop empathy, and it wasn't until the very end that Ladybird developed empathy towards her mom and sort of understood her mom. But her mom still didn't quite get her.
So this film is billed as a comedy. What did people find especially funny in the film?
Just before we get back to that, looked like Arthur had his hand up.
Okay, yeah, fine.
So, and then I'll get you, Jan. Go ahead, Arthur.
I was just gonna say, when you were talking about the relationship between the mother and daughter, I'm wondering if maybe some of the resentment the mother had toward the daughter was because she sees herself when she was young, and maybe she had made some mistakes and don't want to see her daughter make the same mistakes. It was just something that crossed my mind.
Mm-hmm. Probably a good point. Go ahead, Jan.
The scene where the coach came in to take over for the theatrical group was delightful.
Hilarious.
I mean, with the football diagrams coming in and scores and all that, I laughed out loud at it. So to me, that was very funny.
Bill S. and then Tammy.
I thought the scene where they were eating the communion wafers, she and her girlfriend and the other person comes in. You can't be doing that, and that whole thing was pretty funny.
But then she said, "Oh, but they're not consecrated." Right? It's okay.
It's just bread. Tammy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I really, really liked Ladybird, the character. Like most teenagers, you want to hug her one minute and shake her the next. I just thought she was really realistic. I had a little bit of a problem at the end of the movie. I couldn't tell if she was really happy at school. I mean, she goes out and ends up in the hospital and all this stuff, which to me didn't seem the actions of a happy person to finally get to where she wants. But yet, she calls her mom, and you could definitely feel, she relates to the mom there. And I just wasn't sure about that ending.
Okay. Arthur, and then Susan.
One scene that I thought was pretty funny in the movie was the scene where the teacher misplaced his grade book, and he counted on the students to tell them what the grade was. And the scene where Lady Bird actually gave a grade that was actually higher than it actually was, and he caught her at it. I thought that scene was pretty funny.
Kind of difficult. Okay, then Susan.
Yeah, I wanted to get back to the comment from maybe Tammy, was it, about the end being the ambivalent, or she wasn't really sure how happy Lady Christine was. To me, the whole movie was really not so much about happiness; it was about growth, and each little incident that was displayed or played led to the character growing in some way. And to me, the very end of it, where she, of course, like everybody who goes to college, goes out and gets drunk with bad company. I mean, it's like inevitable. And yet, she didn't give up. She didn't quit school. And she made peace, I think, with her mother. And I think that was sort of the whole point of this movie.
I would agree. Yeah. Chuck?
Yeah, one character I found really funny and really great was the nun, like Jan had mentioned. I really liked her. She had a good sense of humor, and this is so much like the opposite of what you think would be portrayed in a film. You would think the nun would be strict and like a tyrant, but she was really nice and understanding and had a sense of humor. She didn't mind that the kids put that or she may have minded, but she found that a little bit amusing that they put she's married to Jesus, and so she said like for 40 years, So I just thought she had a lot of good dialogue in the film, and one line I really liked was probably my favorite line in the film when she was talking to Lady Bird about her writing, and she told her, it tells you really love San Francisco or Sacramento, my fault. And she said, well, I just pay attention. And then she said, isn't that the same thing, love and attention? So I really liked that line as well. That was great. So her character I really found wonderful.
Another line that she had that I really liked was the situation with the nun is that when they were dancing, she pulled them apart and said, 6 inches for the Holy Spirit. good fun, right?
Who else? I enjoyed Shelley. I thought Shelley was a kind of subtle, but that was her name, right? The daughter / girlfriend. There were a couple of times where her expressions were really like the sarcasm was just a little great for me, and I kind of paid attention to that a little bit too. So, Jeff?
I thought back when I watched this to when we watched Nebraska, and I think somebody made the point, maybe it was you, Andy, that would you like to watch a movie about one of the supporting characters? And in this one, there's like 25 characters that I would gladly watch a whole movie about. Uh, I love the fact that they turn things a little bit away from the stereotypical. Like normally, the little bitchy rich girl is a villain, and she's not really here. And maybe the parents are kind of essentially villains. They're not here. They're just good people, and they're a little quirky and they're different. And I love the fact that they didn't feel they needed to have a bad guy in this. So but every character in this almost that has a speaking part is given a little bit of depth, and they're interesting. I would gladly watch a movie about any 20, like almost every speaking part in this movie.
Yeah, really well crafted script, I think. Right.
Arthur?
Yeah, another scene I thought was amusing and was the scene where she befriended this girl, and instead of invited her over, but instead of giving her her address, she gave her the address of the one guy she was dating early in the movie, her grandmother's address. And when she goes over there, this lady is like, I thought that scene was pretty funny.
Yeah, it was pretty good. Anyone else? Oh, Bill? Yeah, go ahead.
So
I thought that Timothy Chalamet's character was a villain.
Yeah, agreed. No, a lot of people like him. Yeah, bad guy, but also
good bad guy.
also typical, dare I say, douchey teen. So Jeff.
Well, I thought he was, yeah, he had bad shadings. I don't think he was a bad person. I took him right off. He's a poser. He's got this highbrow book that he's got bent over. And I think every time you saw him, almost, he was reading that. And I thought, okay, this guy is just a cool poser guy. But I didn't hate him. I thought he served the purpose he had in the film, but I did not ever consider him a villain.
You're not a girl, Jeff. Oh, yeah. Ethan makes a really good point in the chat. I just want to say that there are many times where they could have gone trope and they didn't. Like when the rich girl found out that she was poor and lied, and could have been, "Oh, I'm not going to be your friend when you're poor," or, "Oh no, you're such a great person." It was like, "Oh well, I mean, you're going to be around anyway since you're with Kyle, so whatever."
So what things do people see in the movie that set it at the turn of the century now? That lots of little pieces of things I saw.
Besides the flip phone.
Yeah, flip phone was one.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, even at the beginning when they're in the car, they're listening to cassettes.
Right.
The book on tape it was truly a book on tape, right? So you don't see that much anymore. I guess the library might still have some, but
No,
completely
No.
gone now. Okay,
completely gone. Cassettes and VHSs. Yeah, no one has anything to play them reliably anymore, right? So there's some good things in the chat. 9/11, the music, Playgirl magazine. I don't think that's still out anymore, right? Although Camel Lights are still out.
Right. And then they another thing was that they had clove cigarettes. They just had a very brief time as being the cool thing, and then they apparently gone too now. And then I thought that when the father got the Christmas present with stitching on the saying on the pillow, you don't see that was a big thing for a while too. Something you don't see anymore. That I went back and found out what it said. It went so fast. It said, "Golfers never die; they just exist on greens." So, and then there was a shot of Tower Records. That's something that was very big and is gone now too, or largely gone anyway. So do you think parents of teens could get any lessons from this film?
Anyone? Martha and Bill are cracking up. I don't know. They've got something.
He said not pleasant lessons. I looked back and Ladybird didn't resemble any of our kids, but I'm like, did our kids see me that way? And yes. Stop. We'll chat later.
Okay.
I think there were quite a few moments of what not to do, as like Bill, as Martha said. But I also think that there was something along with the dad and their dynamic, and just kind of the way that he sort of supported Lady Bird in the empty spaces where the mom couldn't, so that to me was maybe something that was a good thing. Go ahead, Martha, and then Jeff.
Still thought the dad.
Yeah, superfluous, is that what you said? Oh, okay. Go ahead, Jeff. Oh,
Well, I thought that the father was an interesting character in that you might have seen him as a bit of a nebbish in another film, but he was kind of quietly supportive. And the highlight of the whole film for me is him sticking that envelope with the mother's crunched up notes in the briefcase. Like I thought that was absolutely perfect. Like he just because he's I know these two are never going to say these things to each other, so I'm going to just take the initiative and do this. And you don't know what's going on there when he first does that, but that was perfect. I loved that scene.
go ahead, John.
The father, I think, what I got from it was a classic good cop. Mom bad cop, and every parent, every family sometimes has that balance. But I think his good intentions were really good. But I just think he was a little overwhelmed, and also he lost his job, and he felt that I think a lot of us can feel. We talk about the times we're in sometimes about with all technology. At our ages, we're kind of get left in the dust a little bit when we get to a certain point. We can't keep up with it. The kids are so adept to all the technology, and he lost his job, and partially because of something like that. And that was back years ago, 2002, 2003. But yeah, he was a good cop, and I think that the movie really needed that, and a good soul. But and in the end, like we were saying with the notes going out, you can see he really meant well.
Debbie?
Yeah, I thought the father was the key character, actually. He enabled her to go to school in New York. He did the paperwork that her mother wouldn't do. So, and then he kept saying, "Don't tell your mom." I was struck by how often he would say, "Don't tell your mom I told you this." There was a lot of secrecy in this movie. She was keeping secrets for any number of people. So that was one of the things that struck me about the relationships.
So when after Lady Bird graduates from high school, her mom finds out that she's on the wait list to New York school, and she goes silent after that. So how does Lady Bird react to that silence? No thoughts, huh?
That's one of the moments where I had problems with their relationship, and how it was really painful as a daughter to see a mom react that way. But then you have to think back and think, okay, well, she knows that if she leaves, she's leaving me. Like maybe she's having abandonment issues, and she's like can't express that because she doesn't know how to. Because maybe, and I think it was interesting that the dad said that about the notes. Like she didn't want to give it to you because she didn't want you to find fault in her writing, and she didn't want you to criticize her. Yet she was very critical of Lady Bird. So I think that that dynamic between the two of them. I think Lady Bird took it as you hate me, and it was really sad to watch her beg and apologize over and over again for some like acceptance or some love. But it was obvious that it was I can't talk to you right now because I know that this means you're going to move on, right? So yeah, Jan, and then Bill Sikora.
Well, Lady Bird seemed to try on a number of occasions to get her to come around, and she didn't, which made it all the more difficult for me going back to, was she's a therapist? Was the mom a therapist? Because at some point you would think, okay, let's talk it out, especially if she was trained that way. That's where I had the most trouble with the movie. It was trying to determine what the mother was. But even having said that, if somebody is trained in that area, they might not be able to apply it personally. Maybe they would be good with other people. So, in some respects, Lady Bird, being 17, 18, seemed a bit more mature than her mom regarding trying to getting back together, especially before she went off to college. Difficult relationship.
One of the things I observed that when Mom went silent is that Lady Bird kept saying, "Oh, I know I'm awful about this, and I know I'm doing badly on this." This is so she's taking her things that her mom would have told her, and she's enunciating them herself and saying, "Well, Mom would have said this, and Mom would have said that." And so I'm not sure how I deal with it, but maybe that'll get Mom to talk to me.
Jim, I think that was a great. I think that's a great way to look at that. I kind of felt like the mom was letting her work it out herself. Like you said, she was reiterating things that her mom probably would have told her, and I think it was probably incredibly difficult for her mom just to be silent. But I think that she felt that in order for her to gain enough maturity, she has to just work this out. That's the way I took that scene.
Okay, what did Lady Bird do after she finally got accepted to her New York school?
What did she do?
Yeah, she does something. Yep, Darnice has the right thing.
She painted her room. She got rid of all of that, all of the notes, all of the things she wrote over, like clean slate. I'm leaving this all behind me, kind of thing.
Yep.
It was very kind of a washing away her sins, even just like
I'm ready for a new life, and this is where we start, right? Good. Yeah. Any reactions to the airport scene?
Chuck.
Yeah, I mean the scene after she drops off the dad and her daughter, and she's driving away. You can tell, just see the pain in her face, and it is just a wonderfully acted scene by Laurie Metcalf, and just very very painful, and just very touching in my opinion.
Definitely. Anybody else? Andy.
I thought that was the best scene in the movie. And I did some research, and Laurie Metcalf told Greta Gerwig, "I can only do this scene twice. It's taking too much of a toll on me." And I don't know if that's the first cut or the second cut that they used, but I can certainly understand that.
Yeah.
Definitely. Jan, did you have your hand up?
No.
Okay. Bill?
So I'm hoping that other people can help me. I was kind of assuming as the movie went on, but I don't think they ever defined it, that the older brother was adopted. He was physically way different than everybody. And at one point, mom's, they talk about mom being older when she had her daughter, but they don't talk about when she had her son. I got the impression he was adopted and that he was Hispanic. Maybe totally off base here, but and I think that that's why he was a little bit able to get away with almost anything, and could do no wrong, even though he was doing lots of things that weren't necessarily right in the mother's eyes. But he could do no wrong, and Lady Bird could do no right, and I don't know where that came from. Oh.
Jeff?
Yeah, Bill, that's the impression I got, that he was adopted. Like they name him Miguel, so there's no confusion that he's Hispanic. Um, and I think this is to the movie's credit that they didn't feel they had to provide a backstory for him. Like we can figure that out. He's adopted. He's an adopted brother. Um, and I'm glad you brought him up because there's a very tiny little detail they throw in there, which I thought was beautiful, where Ladybird is they're having a fight, and Ladybird says, "You're never going to get a job with all that shit in your face," you know. And when he goes to the job interview that his dad is applying for as well, it's all gone. So even though they seem to have an antagonistic relationship, like he listened to her when she said that. So yeah, I think that's a very minor character, but they give it a little bit of weight, and it's not a throwaway character.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely not a throwaway character. They even, that little argument they had when she wanted to go to school, and she threw in that thing about, insinuating that he got into Berkeley on, you know, affirmative action or minority, something like that. That there was definitely something there. But I also like the fact that they didn't bring it up, that it wasn't germane to the story. It wasn't about her relationship with him. It was about her relationship with the mom. So it wasn't really necessary to mention that. Just like, the fact that she took Shelley in when her parents didn't appreciate, or didn't accept her. That was just like an aside that really wasn't part of the story. It added a little layer, but it really wasn't great. And I didn't really see I didn't see any kind of preferential treatment for him with the father, but that might, or the mom, but that might be me too. Susan, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think it was clear to me that in this family, the boy or the son, regardless of whether he was adopted or not, it is treated differently by the mother than Ladybird, and the expectations were different. But what I'd like to talk about, because I don't know if we're going to get to it, but it really struck me about this movie, is the sense of place. And I really love movies that take me to an authentic, real place. I used to live probably 50 miles southwest of Sacramento, and I spent a lot of time in Sacramento, and it just brought me right into their lives and what kind of people I mean, it was so authentic. And driving around those canals down in there off the river, and through the town, through Sacramento, of the kind of wrong side of the tracks, the stores and the I don't know, roads, so on. I was really it really moved me.
I think that a lot of that shows Greta Gerwig's love for Sacramento, where she grew up. So, but yes, I agree that showing the sense of place was an important thing. Yeah. So, what transformations do you think that Ladybird went under when she was in New York?
Debbie.
I was thinking maybe she was starting to learn that maybe New York was not all wonderful like she was anticipating it to be, which I was expecting actually. It's interesting because I did a kind of reverse of Ladybird. I was born in New York City, raised in Queens until I was 12, then moved to California to the Central Valley. So I'm familiar with Sacramento and have been there, and that bridge was just brought back a flood of memories. But anyway, I hated New York when I was growing up and was really glad to get out. But so I thought, yeah, wait till you go to New York, see how much you like living there. I mean, it's crowded, it's expensive, there's all sorts of reasons to hate it, but I mean, I still like New York, oddly enough. I mean, I'd go there, I enjoy it when I'm there. I have a lot of opinions on this, so I'll just shut up at this point. But
Go ahead.
yeah, I think that she really did transform a little bit and realize, oh, I got to put on my big girl pants now and just face life. And maybe it will not be as awesome as I expect, but I have to take that risk. It's growing up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, Debbie mentioned that going back to her real name when a boy asks her, what's your name? And she says, Christine. And then, but where are you from? And she says, Sacramento. I said, what? Oh, San Francisco. So she still had ambivalence about where she was from at that point. But then when she got in the hospital, there was much more transformation happening there too. Any comments more?
Oh, and yeah. No.
He also went back to church.
Right.
Something that I really expected, but I guess it meant more to her than when she was going to Catholic high school and was kind of making fun of the whole institution. And then, kind of when she needed it, went and found it. So,
yeah.
Susan pointed out that it was not a Catholic church. Andy?
I love that scene in the hospital where, as somebody mentioned, she looks down and her name is on the wrist, and then she looks at that little boy, and when she wakes up, she's almost like, "How did I get here?" And then she sees him, and it's almost like, "How did he get here? We got here from different places." But I think it's a great moment for her of realization that, again, it's not all about her. There are other people. That's just a wonderful moment.
Yeah. Greta Gerwig had said that actually when she first started writing the film, she had the ending in mind and she kept that. She didn't change it at all from when she started writing. What do people think about the ending, and what do you think might have happened after the ending?
Yeah. Uh-oh. Can't unmute.
There we go.
There you go.
Sorry. Well, she's growing up. I mean, I'm sure the hospitalization was a scare. Somebody mentioned before it was the obligatory get drunk in college, and most of us didn't land up in the hospital though. But I wasn't sure the time frame because she seemed to get to a level of maturity rather quickly. I don't know how long that was that she had been in New York. It seemed rather quick only because we didn't see a lot before happen. To me, it was coming of age. She's getting mature, time to get serious. We don't really see her taking any classes or anything. A lot of her goal was to get to New York to get culture, but not necessarily educated. We didn't hear too much about that. But yeah, you come away thinking she's growing up and going to take life a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, Ethan made a good point in the chat that he didn't want to think about the ending because it was just kind of too satisfying to pick apart. So there's a number of scenarios, she could stay, she could go back to school, she could go to UC Davis, she could, just come home for holidays, but anticipating what that would be, this is less of a sequel kind of movie for me. Oh, go ahead, Andy. Tell us about the commentary.
Oh, I was just watching this film on Blu-ray, and on the commentary, it talks about how, and I love picking apart endings, especially last scenes, last shots. And if you do go back and watch it, don't use a Canon credit. You can just get it from the library. Keep your credit. But she's on the phone, or she ends her conversation, and she takes a breath, and it cuts, and we don't see her exhale because that's the next chapter in her life.
Deep.
I love that.
It's great. Jeff's mind is blown. Anybody else have comments? You have other things you want to say, John? Oh, Jeff, go ahead.
Just in as a final comment, I went into this with a little bit of trepidation because I'm not usually big on these coming of age shows because invariably it's a kind of a sulky, misunderstood teen, and she has parents that are bad people and they don't understand her, and her like school or the like the nun in this case are kind of bad, and they have like there's the bitchy girl at school who she has to overcome, and I just love that this film didn't go down any of those paths. You know, it's just really it just really rang true, and more credit to them for doing it that way because this could have gone down the path of so many other disposable teen movies, and it didn't. So, and thumbs up to them.
Yeah, agreed.
Do I see Ethan raise his hand?
No, he was
No,
giving a
okay.
thumbs up.
Oh, okay, thumbs up. Something went up.
He was doing his Roger Ebert impression.
Well, Jim, if you want to, I think Jim has a recommendation and I have a recommendation. So, Jim, unless you had any other,
No, that's fine. Yeah, my only recommendation of something that I actually have seen is the 2019 version of Little Women, which was directed by Greta Gerwig and starred Saoirse Ronan. So it was a really, really good take on Little Women. So I really enjoyed that movie.
and I think it's significant that Greta Gerwig has been nominated for Best Director for Ladybird and for Little Women. So she's 2 for 2. That's not a bad track record for her.
Yeah, no. Bill, did you have your hand up?
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Bill, did you?
I was just making a joke that Little Women was the sequel because of the multiple stars that were in both movies.
Ah. Ethan?
I just want to quickly say that Greta Gerwig was not nominated for Best Director for Little Women, just for Best Adapted Screenplay.
Oh,
So
I thought she was nominated for Best Director.
that was for Ladybird, along with Best Original Screenplay.
Okay,
so
I thought it was both. My bad.
No, don't worry about it.
There's still a good track record.
And still hasn't won.
Yeah.
So Andy, you had another recommendation?
I do. I have another mother-daughter film, but quite different from Lady Bird, and this is one that's on Canopy and on DVD from the library, and that is I, Tanya, also from 2017. And even if you were completely sick of seeing the saga of ice skating Olympic hopeful Tanya Harding, I highly recommend this movie for its performances by Allison Janney, who won an Oscar for playing Tanya's mother. And if you want to talk about the mother from hell, here she is. And she's terrific. But I think even better is Margot Robbie, who plays Tanya Harding. I think she should have won Best Actress that year. It's like watching a total train wreck. And if you were following the story in the 90s, you know how it's going to end. But it's a train wreck you'll never forget.
Awesome. Arthur?
One movie that Lady Bird parallels, even though there's no mother-daughter conflict in it, it's more of a coming-of-age story as well. In fact, it's the only other coming-of-age story that I like where the main character was female. And this movie I highly recommend if you haven't seen it. It's an old movie. It's called Sterile Cuckoo. This stars Liza Minnelli. And I remember watching it when it first came out, and I was in love with it. And it's a very good story. It takes place actually in New England, and she's a freshman in college, and she meets this young man, and the young man, the character, kind of reminds me of the first one Lady Bird got involved with, even though this guy didn't turn out gay or anything like that. But there are some similarities. And if you like Lady Bird, I think you'll like this movie too.
Very good. All right.
Well, I have one thing.
Sure.
Jerry, the name of it was called Sterile Cuckoo. Is that right?
Mhm.
Okay.
It's in the chat.
It's in the chat. Yeah. Jerry wants to know if anybody knows what the quote about Christmas in Sacramento means. Did you come in your research come up with that, Andy or Jim?
No, I didn't come up with that.
All right.
If anybody finds out, you can let us know.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well, I would like to thank Jim for leading us through this. An excellent discussion, Jim. Thank you again. I may put you on call if that's okay.
Great participants. That's what makes it work.
They are great participants, as
Yeah.
always. Well, yes, a big thank you to Jim and to everybody that joined us tonight. Thank you guys so much. And be on the lookout for emails about what's coming up soon and what's coming up in the winter months. Like I said, I'm working on that now and hope to have something to share with you soon. Darnice.
Oh, no, I was clapping my hands.
Oh, you're clapping. All right, everybody. Thanks once again and have a great weekend. Watch some great movies. Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.